Have you ever noticed how someone who grew up in the 1980s can sit in a quiet room without flinching? There is a kind of stillness there that feels almost rare now. Not the frozen posture of someone waiting for a notification, not the restless habit of reaching for a screen, just a grounded presence, a comfort with empty space. To understand that kind of calm, you have to visit a world that feels impossible to modern life, a world before the digital tether, a world defined by what was missing. In the 1980s, the American landscape was full of unrecorded moments. If you were not home, you were simply gone. No read receipts, no location pins, no constant proof of attention. At the time, we did not call it wellness, we called it normal. And quietly, without anyone planning it, we were being trained not to hate silence, not to fear boredom, but to live inside them without breaking. Picture a typical afternoon in 1985. You're 10 years old. The school bus drops you off at the end of a long suburban street. Sun on the pavement, light wind in the trees. You walk alone, and the soundtrack is small, your sneakers tapping concrete, a distant lawnmower 3 blocks away, a dog barking once and then stopping. You reach your front door, you lift the corner of a worn welcome mat, and there it is, a heavy brass key. Warm from the sun, a little scratched, a little too grown up for your hand. You are a latchkey kid. Today that phrase is often said with sympathy, but back then it was not a tragedy. It was an initiation. You turn the key and step into an empty house, the air is still, the rooms are quiet in a way that feels physical. The loudest thing is the clock, tick after tick, steady and honest. No internet to greet you, no feed to tell you who you are, no glowing screen to keep you from meeting yourself. And in that quiet, something important begins to happen. Your mind starts to generate its own weather, its own stories, its own questions. This is where the internal compass is born. Most people do not realize how much strength comes from a life that includes pauses. Boredom is not a failure of the day. Boredom is space. It is the blank page where imagination finally speaks up. In the 1980s, boredom was a teacher we could not avoid, so we learned from it. You lay on the living room carpet and stare at the popcorn ceiling until the patterns start to move. You listen to the same cassette tape until the song feels like part of your bloodstream. You flip the tape with a pencil and you feel like a small engineer. You sit on the porch steps and watch cars pass like they are planets. Nothing dramatic happens, and that is the point. Your nervous system learns a quiet skill. It learns that a low signal is not an emergency. It learns that silence is not punishment. It is just silence. This did not make us better than anyone else. It made us trained in a certain way. And that training is useful now because the modern world is fast and bright and always talking. It offers endless stimulation, endless opinion, endless comparison. For younger people especially, it can feel like you are never allowed to be unfinished, never allowed to be offline, never allowed to be unknown, but you are. Allowed you are built for more than constant input, and you can build that same inner room, even now, even with a phone in your pocket. The 80s also gave us something else, something gentle and powerful: privacy. We grew up with room to be awkward in peace, bad haircuts, cringe phases. First attempts at being cool, they disappeared into memory instead of becoming a permanent record. Because our mistakes were not broadcast, we could actually learn from them. We could change without performing the change, we could become ourselves in private. That does something important to a person. It builds confidence that does not depend on applause. It builds self-respect that does not require an audience. It builds a quiet identity that can survive a loud world. If you were born later, none of this is meant to shame you. You did not choose the era you inherited. You are not weak because you grew up surrounded by screens. You're simply living inside a system designed to pull your attention outward. So the lesson is not to reject technology. The lesson is to recover your balance, to remember that you can step back, that you can create absence on purpose, that you can practice stillness like a skill. Try something simple. Leave your phone in another room for 30 minutes. Sit in a chair and let the silence show you what it feels like. At first, your mind will reach for noise that is normal. Do not fight it, just notice it, then let it pass. Breathe, look out a window, listen for the small sounds. Let boredom arrive like a visitor and stay long enough for imagination to wake up. This is not nostalgia, this is training. The same kind of training that once happened by accident can happen by choice. And when you build that inner room, you gain something priceless. You become a steady person inside it, a person who can stand still when everyone else is running. In the 1980s, our parents gave us one command that felt like the law of nature. Be home before the streetlights come on. That was the boundary inside it. We had freedom. We learned to be lost. We learned to return. We learned that the world is big and we are capable. The streetlights were not just a schedule. They were a symbol, a reminder that life moves in rhythms, that the day has an end, that you do not have to be reachable every second to be loved. And if you can carry one thing from that era into this one, let it be this: make room for the quiet, not as an escape, as a foundation. Because a strong life is not built only from what you consume, it is built from what you can hold: silence, patience, privacy, and the calm courage of being fully present. The quiet of the empty house built an inner room, but the streets of 1980s, America built something else: a practical courage, a way of reading people and reality without a filter. Back then, there was no digital buffer between you and the world. No algorithm arranging your friendships, no endless rehearsal before you spoke. Life happened live and you learned, quickly, how to be human in real time. If you wanted to find your friends, you did not open an app. You went looking. You pedaled your bicycle toward the places where teenagers gathered: the mall, the park, the gravel lot behind, the grocery store. The corner where someone always seemed to be. And your only notification was physical. A pile of bicycles tossed on a lawn, a cluster of laughter near the food court, a familiar jacket across the street. That search taught you something modern. Life can easily forget. Connection is not just information. Connection is presence. You did not join a group chat. You stepped into a room, and in 1 second you had to read it. You noticed the angle of shoulders, the space people left between each other, the way a smile could be real or forced. You learned who was welcoming and who was guarding the circle. You learned the difference between teasing and cruelty, not from a guidebook, from experience. This was street-level emotional intelligence, and it made you surprisingly good at sensing what was true. Even when no one said it out loud, communication also asked more bravery from your nervous system. We laugh now about the landline phone, but if you were a teenager, that phone could feel like a cliff edge. If you wanted to talk to someone you liked, you dialed their home number. You could not hide behind a perfect message edited for an hour. You had to speak, and you had to risk the gatekeeper. A parent might answer, an older sibling might answer. You had to say your name clearly, even when your voice trembled. You had to accept the awkward moment as the price of being real. That kind of moment does not damage you, it strengthens you. It teaches you that discomfort is temporary. It teaches you that your heart can race and you can still be okay. It builds social calluses, not to make you cold, to make you capable. And when conflict showed up, there was no escape hatch, no block button in the hallway, no disappearing into the digital mist. If you argued with a friend, you were going to see them, at school, at practice, at the diner, at the same corner store. That reality did not make life perfect, but it often made things repairable. You learned to deal with tension, to apologize when you meant it, to negotiate a truce, to keep your pride small enough to keep your friendships. You learned that relationships are not disposable. They are messy, durable things that grow through honest maintenance. Today, younger people have tools that can be genuinely helpful. You can reach support faster. You can find communities that understand you. You can learn skills in minutes that once took weeks to access. That is real progress. But the old training still matters because there will always be moments when the screen cannot do the brave part for you. The brave part is still you, showing up, speaking clearly, listening fully, staying in the room when it would be easier to leave. The 1980s also gave teenagers a direct education in effort and reward. If you wanted something, you usually had to create the value for it. You mowed lawns in humid July heat. You delivered newspapers before dawn when the street was empty. You washed dishes in the back of a small restaurant until your hands smelled like soap and steam, and slowly a belief formed: I can make things happen. Not everything. Not always, but more than I thought. That belief is not just financial, it is psychological agency as a kind of oxygen. When you earn, the money for your first pair of sneakers, you do not just buy shoes, you buy proof. Proof that you can move from desire to reality through persistence. You learn that freedom is not a gift you wait for, it is a muscle you build. We also lived in a different relationship with information. Before the internet, knowledge felt scarce and heavy. If you wanted an answer, you went to the library, you walked between tall shelves, you pulled down a thick encyclopedia, you searched with your hands, your eyes, your patience. That process did not make people smarter by default, but it often made curiosity stronger because the answer was not instant. You had to want it. And when you finally found it, you trusted it differently. You respected the work behind it. You also learned an important habit. Sometimes you do not know yet. And that is not a crisis. It is an invitation to learn. Even our hardest feelings moved at a slower speed. When heartbreak arrived, it was not broadcast. It was private. You sat with it. You listened to the same song until you knew it like a memory. You stared at a ceiling and let time do what time does. It hurt. Yes. But it also taught something quietly powerful. Feelings rise, feelings peak, feelings pass. You learn that you can survive a bad night. You can wake up and still be yourself. You can grow around what you felt. That is not a romantic story about pain. It is a respectful story about healing. And it is one of the most useful skills a person can have in any era. When you put all of this together, you begin to see what the streets of that time really offered. A laboratory for real life. Unedited conversations, earned confidence, face-to-face repair, and a steady sense that you can handle what shows up. Not because you are fearless, because you have practiced being brave. If you are younger, you can build that courage now without giving up the good tools of the present. Choose one honest conversation this week that you would normally avoid. Say the thing clearly, kindly, and directly. Spend one afternoon without constant input and let boredom do its quiet work. Do one small task that requires effort and patience and finish it. Not for praise, for proof, because the future will always reward the people who can stay steady, who can do the slow work, who can tolerate the unfinished long enough for something solid to form. As we move further from the 20th century, life keeps speeding up. Desire turns into purchase in seconds. Questions turn into answers in moments. Loneliness turns into noise with a single tap. This is convenient and often genuinely helpful. But there is a hidden cost to living at that speed. The human nervous system was not built to sprint all day. It was built to move in rhythms, to rest, to recover, to return. For those who grew up in the 1980s, there was an unplanned education in those rhythms. Everything took time. You waited for a television episode, you waited for a ride, you waited for a letter, you waited for a film to be developed, you waited for the season to change. Waiting was not romantic. It was ordinary, and because it was unavoidable, it did something quiet and powerful. It taught patience without calling it patience. It taught you how to tolerate the unfinished. That ability is a form of strength. Because real life is unfinished most of the time. A career takes years to build. A skill takes repetition. Trust takes consistency. Healing takes time. And when something goes wrong, the best response is rarely instant. The best response is steady. The person shaped by that older rhythm often carries a different kind of calm into chaos. Not because they are numb, not because they have fewer feelings, but because their inner clock is not ruled by urgency. They know that time can be a tool. They know that breathing room can turn panic into clarity. They know that a solution can require a day, a week, a season. There is another gift hidden in the analog years, a sense of self that developed without constant measurement. In the modern world, it is easy to feel watched even when no one is watching. Numbers are everywhere. Views, likes, comments, comparisons. Even private thoughts can start to feel like content. But the teenager of the 1980s had stretches of invisibility, not isolation. In a negative sense. Invisibility in a healthy sense. Room to be ordinary. Room to be uncertain. Room to change direction without announcing it. When you grow without an audience, your identity becomes less performative. You learn what you actually like, what you actually believe, what actually feels true, and that creates a grounded confidence, not loud confidence, quiet confidence. Confidence that does not need constant reinforcement to exist. This does not mean the present is broken, it means the present is intense. Technology has real advantages. It can connect people who would otherwise feel alone. It can help someone learn a skill, find a job, discover a community, get support faster. It can keep families close across distance. It can open doors that used to be locked. That is worth respecting. The goal is not to throw the tools away. The goal is to stop letting the tools own your attention, because attention is your life. What you practice paying attention to becomes your world. So, here is a simple idea, built for modern life, inspired by older wiring. Create intentional absence. Not as a punishment, as a foundation. Choose one part of your day where you're not reachable. Start small, 30 minutes. Put your phone in another room, not face down on the table, not in your pocket in another room. Sit somewhere ordinary, a chair, a couch, a porch step. Let your mind reach for stimulation. It will, that is normal. Notice the impulse and let it pass. Then give your brain something gentle and real. Look out a window. Listen for small sounds. Feel the weight of your body against the seat. Let boredom arrive. Do not fill it immediately. Stay long enough for something deeper to appear. A memory, a question, a plan, a feeling you have been skipping over. This is how you rebuild the internal compass. Another practice is to slow down one desire on purpose. Pick something small you want today, then wait. Not forever. Just long enough to remind your brain that you are the one driving. Write it down. Do one simple task first. Wash a dish. Take a short walk. Finish a page of reading. Then return to the desire and decide again. This is not about discipline as punishment. This is about agency as freedom. It teaches the mind that you can choose your pace. You can also bring back one piece of the old social courage. Choose one conversation this week that you have been delaying. Make it face-to-face if you can. If you cannot, make it a voice call. Speak plainly. Speak kindly. Do not perform. Do not over-explain. Just be real. Real communication is not perfect. It is honest. And when you practice it, you become less afraid of friction. You learn that discomfort is not danger. It is just the feeling of growth happening. There is also the matter of privacy. You do not have to share every feeling to prove it is real. You do not have to broadcast every moment to make it matter. Some of the strongest parts of you grow better in the dark. If you want a powerful habit, choose one place that stays private. A notebook. A walk with no photos. Thought you do not post. A win you keep to yourself. This does not make you secretive. It makes you rooted. It gives you an inner life that does not depend on public reaction. And that inner life becomes a refuge when the world gets loud. The most valuable things in life still cannot be digitized. The warmth of a real handshake. The comfort of sitting beside someone without needing to fill the air. The weight of a physical book in your hands. The feeling of being lost for a moment and realizing you can find your way back. The quiet pride of finishing a task when no one is watching. These are not relics. They are building materials. The future will not reward the loudest person. It will reward the steadiest person, the person who can focus, the person who can wait. The person who can think clearly without needing constant input. The person who can be present when everything is competing for attention. If you grew up in the 1980s, you carry that training already. If you did not, you can build it now. Not by escaping modern life, but by shaping it, by choosing silence sometimes, by choosing patience sometimes, by choosing real connection. Often, because being grounded is not nostalgia, it is a skill, and it is one you can practice until it becomes part of your character. The streetlights will always come on in some form. A day ends, a season, turns, a chapter, closes. What remains is the wiring you built along the way. Make it steady, make it kind, make it strong enough to hold your life with both hands and brave enough to stand still, even when the world is running.